and and a good place to kind of to pivot to would be culture. And so when we look at the cultures of great organizations, they are they're very there's a very interesting mix. There's some companies that have done well for a long period of time, and it's been attributed to leadership, but people who have spent time in some of those organizations really turn it around and say, well, it may be leadership from the outside, but the important part of leadership has really been more company culture. And so from your standpoint, what does great culture look like?
I think, without giving a definition of culture, it is when an organization is successful, even if the leader is not there. That is, it has a business model that is sustainable, and in the vernacular of in business to make money for all practical purposes, that the business will continue to thrive even if the leader or the person who founded the company or the person who is in charge right now leaves. That culture is sustainable. Now, when you think about that, you're talking about a change in human beings. If you look at one company in particular that I have looked at and admired from afar is Southwest Airlines. If you look at Southwest Airlines, it would be very, very difficult for someone to come in and have those persons work and act like people at Delta. They just not going to do that. They're going to have fun. They want to tell jokes. That is the way that they were hired. That is the way that they have felt comfortable. And quite frankly, what you want to have is a culture where people can reach as much as possible their self-actualization. That is kind of getting at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You get past the stuff I gotta have, but I feel like that the good Lord sent me here, and I'm good where I am. I'm not worrying about a promotion, but I feel productive and I feel good where I am.
Right. That is two really awesome things that I'm going to pull from that is Southwest. Herb Kelleher.
Yeah.
We talk about kind of how he unpacked that company and the idea that they could have fun. Right? And you think there is an innate desire. Going again, your second point with Maslow hierarchy of needs. We want to survive, number one, but but the second part, once the brain is positioned to keep you alive, it's the thriving piece. And to thrive, you need to have fun, right? And I used to. In one of my former organizations, talk about, look, if this ever stopped being fun, that's it. I've got to find something else to do.
Right?
Because I love working on things. All right, we love. If we're gonna make some gumbo, you and I both like to cook. If we're gonna make some gumbo, we're gonna make some ribs. It to somebody else, it looks like work.
Yes,
we're just enjoying an art form. We're using that to paint this masterpiece, and so that's really when I hear you talk about people self actualization in terms of developing that person or people or that group of people to get where ultimately they see themselves is really a great. Description of culture, positive culture, and culture. Having a great culture. I think you look at a lot of the business writing over time. You and I really didn't start as business people or entrepreneurs, but we've developed into those roles. Trust is one of the things that's really more and more you see as being a really important ingredient. So if you trust your leader, if you trust your teammates, we talked about your grandson earlier. If you trust your coaching, you can stand where your feet are. You can be where your feet are and execute. So how have you seen trust not necessarily develop, but how have you seen it play a role in developing and maintaining a great company culture?
Yeah, I think one of the things that in human relationships, and I could even relate to our relationship, is consistency. Trust is built on consistency. If you're going to have a good relationship with your significant other, your girlfriend, your wife, brother, sister, doesn't matter. It is the consistency of, I know that when he says he's going to be here, he's going to be here. I know if he said it, then I can believe it. I can, those kinds of things. Good leaders understand that when I first meet someone or my group, every time I was promoted to another position, I had to go in and then I would hear somebody who quickly had no problem telling me, well, we really think you're going to be a certain way because we know you came from another place. So I know that immediately I've got to earn the trust. I don't assume they know it. I don't assume anything about it, but it's on me as the leader to build that trust. So I separate, meet them collectively, hear the rules. We're going to come to work on time. We're going to do this. But now I've got to treat each one of them differently, treat everybody the same, but then I got to treat each individually differently. And I can't do that unless I get to know them. So as a leader, you got to know who the players are and treat them different.
That is, again, it wraps up that individual. You talked earlier about Sunday school and a shepherd knowing his sheep.
Yes.
And if every time you went from one division to the next, you showed up and you let's say you call this meeting.
Yes.
You stood up there and you said, this is what we're going to do and this is where we're going. And you left it at that, you would have never developed meaningful relationships. Because I'm sure that there have been people who have left Alabama Power, for example, and have reached out and said, hey, I'm changing where I'm planted. I'm moving on to another endeavor, another company, but I would love a recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And without it is a much different conversation for someone you've had a relationship with versus somebody who just existed under your leadership.
Right. That is correct.
And so I think one of the things that we talk about is, as you look at culture takes, or would you agree that culture requires more than managers? They require adept leaders, regardless of whether that person is in the mailroom or their CEO.
Yeah, you see, culture. For the sake of those who may glean from this in another sphere and at another time, culture is not something that you can put in a book. You can't give each employee something and say, read this, and you'll read something about the culture. It is the perceived environment that tells me what I have permission to do and what I can do and feel comfortable that it is something that meets my expectation and the values that I have.
Right. Yeah.
That's when it thrives. That's when you, as you said in a previous conversation we had, I want to be able to have a relationship with the employee. When I leave the building, I can feel reasonably comfortable they're going to make the right decision because they got to make one. But if you don't have a culture that gives them permission and you have not enabled them so they can feel empowered to make that decision. And I'm putting voice inflection on enabling and empowering. Empowering someone is one of the cliches that you want to say, I want to empower them to do that. But the reality is, if you have not enabled, the empowerment will fail.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. You know, we think about the idea of we've seen teams over the years, mm-hmm. You know, from a performance standpoint. And so people say, well, and you talked about, let's say if we hire character, in our conversation, or if we hire character, we can teach skill. Mm-hmm. But what if I come in, or we'll say John comes in and he's knocking it out of the park. We didn't hire him, but John comes in and he's doing a really great job. And all of a sudden, you step out of the mix, and you're off campus for 2 months. When you come back, John might be gone. Mm-hmm. And if you asked a question, and this is assuming that you have a great culture and you have great stewards of that culture, and when you get back, John's gone, and someone said, well, Robert, he was not a great fit with our culture. Mm-hmm. Like you said, if you have enabled and empowered, you don't have a problem with John being gone.
That's correct.
He may have been a first-rate producer, but your team, because of the cohesiveness of that culture and how your values were actually visual, or how your values were put into action, helped John realize, and your staff realize, that this is not a great place for John. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's I think when you think about building an enduringly great organization, yep. That's something that, again, when I look at what you've accomplished from a career standpoint, a lot of times we talk about those things. It's not really about Robert. It's about the people that have been part of that journey with you, and how that has impacted the decisions that you've made. And so, talk about culture and having a heart for the people that are serving with you versus working for you.
Yeah. I think there are so many things I can use as examples, Kenny, and I actually. One of the few people, when I got trained, if I go to a leadership training, I came back and tried to do it. Mm-hmm. A lot of times the cliche was, we're going to go off to training, but I'm going to come back and do the same thing I've been doing. There's a bunch of academics, but I would come back and try. I always tried to get the persons who were working with me and to get them to see that you were not working for me, because I'm standing on your shoulders. If you rise from where you are, guess where I'm going? I'm going to rise with you. But if you fall, I'm going to fall with you. When a leader determines and finds out, quick example. My dad was in the all-black tank corps in World War II. General Patton was the leader of that tank corps. And he said to me, son, when General Patton came and talked to us, and he used a bunch of expletives, but when he got through talking to us, we would run through hell with gasoline drawers on. Mm-hmm. That guy had a way of causing them to move away from self and know that he had their back. And so when you talk about leadership, it is about having the persons who are following you, because in reality, when you look at leadership, the followers have to really put you there. Now, you may be there by title, you may have gotten there for other reasons, but when you are really a true leader, is because the followers say, you're my leader. And that means they go above and beyond. And that is what the true art of leadership is. And that's why I believe it can be taught, that you don't lead from your head. You got the intellect, you got the knowledge, you're really smart. But if you lead from your heart, and people can tell when you lead from the heart, as opposed to leading from my head, because I need you to make sure you make enough widgets so I can make enough money so I can get a bonus. When it's reduced to the quantifiable thing that gives me an advantage, then the followers say, look, I'm not going to do any more for him. You can't sustain a culture where you're going to maximize productivity.
Right. Yeah. So that's really a great segue, really, when you look at metrics.
Yeah.
There's a book, the title is What Gets Measured Gets Done. Right. And which in theory is great. But when we start applying it to, for example, we're having a negotiation on salary. If we're going to negotiate salary, from my standpoint, I'm saying, look, you pay me what the market will bear. Well, or not what the market will bear, but there is a market rate. There's a going rate for what I'm going to bring to an organization, or what you're going to bring to an organization. If that's the number that we're looking at, everything else is fine, provided that you're looking at compensation beyond, hey, how many widgets did you make, to use that word, or did this person hit this number and this number and this number? If that's what's going to drive the number, I have a different approach purely from a human standpoint. I have a different approach to how I come in and execute a task. Mm-hmm. If our conversation though is, hey, look, the market maybe $250,000. We're going to start you off at $150,000. It's a significant difference. Yes. But if it's not about the widgets, if it becomes more about the craftsmanship, if you have the purpose that you can really sink your teeth into, if you have the culture that you can really sink your teeth into, and if you're leading me because I know at the end of the day, you've got my back, mm-hmm. work or otherwise. If I know that $150,000 is it might be $500,000 to me, because I can be in a place where I could truly do worthwhile work.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. I remember one time I was told that I was not going to get a raise as much as my counterpart. I mean, title-wise, I was a drafter. This person was a drafter, and I had a degree. That person didn't, but that person had years of experience, and really doing things well outside of his classification. I wasn't. And so he says to me, and this was my mentor, he says, Robert, relative to the overall value that I have, you're not there. You're just not there yet. I don't care all the other stuff you have, but the other person is clearly there. And so I really need to compensate them in a way that lets them see that they're reaching and meeting and exceeding expectations. I didn't lose one iota of sleep with that, because first of all, I trusted him. Mm-hmm. Because if you trust your leader and you can be forthright, tough conversations, difficult conversations are much easier to have. But when you have an adversarial relationship and you have made it all about money, because there had been so many other times he'd take me off to lunch, and he'll take me show me places around the city, just spending that bonding time. So when it came down to a really tough conversation, had no problem with it.
Right.
That's what really leadership is about, is building a relationship so you can have the really tough conversations and they don't create conflict, because you have gone backwards when you get conflict.
No, that is Wow, I think that's a great place to really kind of wrap this part of our conversation up, because again, I think that is trust, the ability to have difficult conversations, grounded in the fact that you have done the things to build and maintain a relationship, with the people that you work with. And then that takes heart. I think Brene Brown talks about in her book Daring to Lead, being vulnerable, and to have tough conversations, you need to be vulnerable.
You do,
because it then becomes more about the thing, the event, than the person.
Yes.
And so I think I really appreciate kind of the time to continue to have conversations like this, even as the situation outside forces us to do things a little bit differently. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm sure those that are watching and will watch will enjoy and look forward to other conversations that we'll have on.
I certainly will also, Kenny. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.